They called him lazy, unmotivated, a disruption waiting to happen. Too smart for his own good, some said. Too scattered to go far, said others. Every report card carried a warning, and every parent-teacher meeting echoed the same question. What's wrong with Eli? But no one asked what it felt like to be Eli, to live in a brain that burned so bright it couldn't sit still, to think in fireworks, in connections too fast to finish, in ideas too bold for paper. He wasn't zoning out, he was zooming past. And when he got punished for not paying attention, he wondered, what if they knew the truth? What if his chaos wasn't failure but fire? They told him to slow down. He learned to rewire. They told him to focus. He learned to fly. And when one teacher finally stopped labeling him and started listening, the world saw what it had missed all along. Not a lazy boy, but a lightning bolt, just waiting for the right wire. Before they called him gifted, before he ever stepped on a stage or cracked a code no one else could solve, they called him trouble. Eli Thompson was the kid who forgot his pencil, who tapped his foot during roll call, who blurted answers out loud, not to show off, but because the thought might vanish if he didn't. From kindergarten to 6th grade, his desk was always closest to the door. Eli's a handful, teachers would whisper, unfocused, defiant, bright, but all over the place. They didn't see the drawings in the margins, intricate machines he made from memory. They didn't see the way he disassembled remote controls just to learn how they spoke to the TV. They saw the missing homework, the late assignments, the 1,000-yard stare during lectures, and at home, it wasn't much easier. His mom worked nights. His dad left when he was 6. There wasn't time for specialists or tutors, just warnings, detentions, and the slow sting of shame. By 12, Eli had learned how to disappear, not physically, but emotionally. He'd joke his way out of every serious conversation, call himself dumb before anyone else could. He stopped trying to explain how his brain worked, because no one seemed to believe him anyway, except his sister, Kayla. She was older, quieter, a math whiz who did her homework with headphones on. But every night, she sat beside him, rewriting instructions in a way only he could understand, breaking lessons into stories, turning problems into puzzles. She never asked him to focus. She asked him to feel the rhythm in the chaos. And for the first time, he did. But school wouldn't wait. Tests came fast. Grades came faster. And Eli felt like he was sprinting through a storm in shoes that didn't fit. Still, something in him refused to sit still, not out of rebellion, but out of brilliance, aching to break free. What would happen if someone finally saw it? It happened on a Tuesday. Eli had just been kicked out of science class again. Something about him talking back when he corrected the teacher's equation. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just couldn't help noticing the numbers were off. He was sent to the hallway, told to cool off. But his brain didn't cool, it spiraled. He paced the corridor, muttering formulas under his breath, tapping rhythms on his thigh, imagining the way gravity might change if the earth spun just 5% faster. That's when Mr. Ahmed, the new learning specialist, walked by. He paused, watched, then asked Eli a question no teacher had ever asked before. "What are you working on in your head right now?" Eli froze. Not "what did you forget?" Not "why can't you just sit still?" But "what are you working on?" He hesitated, then blurted out something about alternate physics models, about memory palaces, about the hum in his brain that never stopped buzzing. Instead of sending him back to class, Mr. Ahmed sat on the hallway floor beside him and said, "That sounds like divergent cognition." Eli blinked. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't sound like trouble. That week, Mr. Ahmed had him tested, but not for what was wrong, for how he learned. The results came back with a diagnosis Eli had heard in passing, but never applied to himself: ADHD combined type. But more than that, his cognitive pattern showed high creative intelligence, exceptional spatial reasoning, and a brain that was, quite literally, on fire with activity. Not broken, not defiant, just different. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, someone handed him a map instead of a muzzle. But now that the spark was recognized, what would he do with it? Eli didn't change overnight, but the world around him started making room. Mr. Ahmed didn't just explain ADHD, he showed Eli how his mind worked best. "Your brain's like a Formula One car," he said, "ridiculously fast, just needs the right track." So they built one. Eli was given noise-canceling headphones and freedom to pace. He used colored index cards instead of notebooks. Math lessons turned into puzzle maps. Science became storytelling, history, timelines etched in 3D models he could touch and manipulate. He still forgot to raise his hand, still interrupted, still lost his backpack twice a week, but he was learning, fast, deep, differently. He stopped trying to fit in, started focusing on how to stand out. When other students struggled to grasp a physics concept, Eli built a simulation in Minecraft, visualizing force, momentum, and gravity with pixel blocks and music cues. When group projects used to terrify him, he became the kid who made flowcharts out of duct tape and ceiling tiles, just to help everyone else follow his logic. And slowly something shifted. Teachers stopped sending him out. They started calling him up. Parents stopped whispering about his behavior. They started asking him to tutor their kids. But the most powerful change? Eli started believing he wasn't lazy. He was lit up with curiosity, ideas, and questions that didn't fit on standardized tests. And once he accepted that, he began building something bigger than himself. So, what would he do with a mind that finally had space to run? Just when Eli had found his rhythm, the system snapped back. A new principle, new rules, and a firm message: no exceptions, no distractions, no special treatment. The flexible seating, gone, noise canceling headphones, against policy. Even his project-based learning plan was replaced with time tests. He tried, he really tried, but with the fluorescent lights humming, the clock ticking louder than thoughts, and 3 essay questions demanding silence, Eli froze. His hands shook, his mind blurred. He walked out mid-exam, heart racing, eyes burning, certain it was all over. Later that week, his mom found him in the garage, surrounded by paper scraps, circuits, and a whiteboard filled with chaotic arrows. "I can't shut it off," he whispered. "My brain, it's like fire, burns everything, unless I build with it." And then came the spark: a local science fair, open format, no written reports, no test scores, just innovation. Eli entered with an idea no one saw coming: a learning station designed for kids like him. Adjustable light, noise buffers, tactile interfaces, gamified logic lessons, voice-guided instruction. He called it the Ignite Pod, not because it was flashy, but because it understood the fire inside. At the event, judges walked past it at first, too raw, too unpolished. But then a teacher tried it and sat there for an hour. Then another judge, then a parent, then a child with dyslexia who whispered, "Can I take this home?" Eli didn't win first place, but he was invited to present his design to the district. And 2 months later, they began piloting Ignite pods in 3 schools. The headlines didn't say ADH kid wins. They said, Teen Design's future of learning for minds like his. Eli stood in the back of that press conference, hood up, head down, until someone handed him a mic. And he said only one thing: "I'm not broken. I was just burning up with ideas no one knew how to catch." Eli never set out to change anyone else's life. He just wanted to be understood. But when the school published his final project, a fully immersive audio-visual experience on how ADHD feels from the inside, something happened. A guidance counselor forwarded it to every teacher in the district. A parent shared it in an online support group. A neuropsychologist emailed him with 3 words: "You explained it better." Then came the messages. From a 14-year-old girl in Texas: "I thought I was broken. Now I know I'm just wired different." From a teacher in Nairobi: "I used to punish students for not sitting still. Now I bring in standing desks." From a mother in Sweden: "My son cried after watching your video. He said, 'That's me. He's like me.'" At Eli School, posters went up. Different minds, same brilliance. And next to the counselor's office, a new resource room opened. Quiet lighting, noise-canceling headphones, fidget tools. They called it the Spark Room, after Eli. He didn't ask for the world to change. He just showed them a new way to see it. And now, 1,000 minds once dismissed as too much, too loud, or too distracted are finally being heard, and maybe finally being taught. Let's hear from the people who once misunderstood Eli and those who saw him before he knew how to see himself. Mr. Ramirez, history teacher: "I used to think Eli was being defiant. Now I know he was overwhelmed. His brain wasn't off task. It was just 10 steps ahead of mine." Tanya, classmate: "Everyone thought he didn't care. But he'd stay after class to help me understand things I couldn't get. He taught me more than the teacher some days." Principal Harris: "There were days I considered suspension. Now, we're using his project to train new staff on neurodiverse learning." Eli's mom: "There was a time I cried in the car after every parent-teacher meeting. They'd say he wasn't trying hard enough. But he was trying every second, just in ways they didn't recognize." An anonymous note taped to his locker: "You made me feel smart for the first time." They used to call him a problem. Now they call him a possibility. And for every kid like Eli, that shift can change everything. Years later, in a sunlit workshop tucked behind the high school, Eli now mentors students who once sat where he did, fidgeting, zoning out, being told to try harder. But here, there are no red marks, no timers, no shame. There's music in the background, tools in every hand, and blueprints that look more like doodles than diagrams. But somehow they work. They call it the Firebrain Lab, named not by Eli, but by the first student who said, "My brain's on fire too, but now I know what to do with it." Eli doesn't talk about grades anymore. He talks about gears, about motion, about how ideas come like lightning, and how to catch them without burning out. There's a quote on the wall, laser etched in steel: "Different isn't broken. It's a different kind of brilliant. It's not signed." But they all know whose voice it echoes. And sometimes when a kid builds something from scratch, a prototype, a poem, a plan, they'll say, "I did this because of Eli." And Eli? He just nods because he remembers the spark, and now he gets to pass the torch. Looking back, Eli doesn't talk about ADHD like a disorder anymore. He calls it his engine, the spark that wouldn't let him sit still, because it was always pushing him towards something more. He used to think he was lazy, that he lacked discipline, that he just wasn't trying hard enough because that's what he was told by teachers, by classmates, sometimes even by himself. But now he knows the truth. He wasn't made for stillness, he was built for momentum. His brain didn't need fixing, it needed a different kind of fuel, and maybe, just maybe, his story isn't rare. Maybe there are thousands of Eli's out there burning silently in classrooms that don't see them. So he keeps building, not just ignite pods, but better questions, better systems, better ways to show kids that their way of learning isn't wrong. It's untapped. Eli no longer tries to calm the fire, he just directs it. Because sometimes the mind they called a problem was really a blueprint for the future. If Eli's story lit something inside you, don't let it fade. Share this with someone who's been misunderstood, someone who was told to sit still when they were born to move, someone who was labeled before they were listened to. Leave a comment for the kids who can't focus, because their minds are building whole worlds at once, for the parents and teachers trying to reach them, for the Elis who haven't been seen yet. And if you believe in stories that reframe what we think intelligence looks like, subscribe to Able in every way. Because sometimes the most powerful minds are just waiting for the right spark.